Okay. So welcome to the March Data VLC. My name is Erin Vabornik. I work with Sarah Goldhammer and Tara Schwab at SIPDC, the southern part of the PDN. And we are joined by a very distinguished guest today. So you all know Kathy, and she is here with us as well. And today is going to be a little bit more open in terms of Q&A, but I did want to get us started with a couple small reminders. And the first reminder, actually, my first question to you before I do the reminder is, as you were waiting in the waiting room, did you have music and a slideshow available to you? Yes, no? I see a thumbs up.
Viewer.
Slideshow, yes. Oh, but not the music. I'll work on that. Okay. So you might have noticed on that slideshow, it mentioned the new Excellence in Adult Education website. And thanks, Maggie. I'll make sure that it waits a little bit longer next time, so it doesn't go flying through each slide. Just something that I was testing out for you. And on our Excellence in Adult Education website is a tab specific to the data VLC. And on there, you'll be able to find a FAQ. So let me show. So right now we have just 3 questions there on the FAQ, and of course the answers as well. But as we continue going forward, we're going to build out that FAQ so that it is a place that you can go if you do have a question about data that maybe you're not sure where to go. Maybe the answer is going to say, look at the provider manual, but maybe it will be something a little bit more specific or linked to a video as well. So make sure that you bookmark that Excellence in Adult Education page, because that's going to be your connection to all of the wonderful professional development that we have going on, and then also all of our recordings from previous sessions and FAQs. All right. So before I turn it back over or turn it over to Kathy, I know that many of you were at that previous Q&A session where we talked about, where Kathy talked about units of instruction and various other data related information. Again, if this sounds like something that you wanted to hear about, but you weren't able to make, any of those Q&A admin meetings are listed on the date or on the Excellence in Adult Education website under the For Administrators tab at the top. So I'm going to pop that into the chat for you in case while we're going through, if you wanted to look at the PowerPoint that Kathy had presented on or any of the additional information that went out. Okay. So Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. So I know that the units of instruction is a really complicated question. And I'm quite sure that you guys, if you were able to be with me at that meeting, you watched me do math live, and that was not pretty, nor was it very helpful. It was a little bit clumsy, and I acknowledge that. So I wanted to be available again to try to answer and clarify anything that I can help you with. Just don't make me do math on the fly, because you're going to see it as clumsy as it was last time. But for really help me understand what your questions and your concerns are as it relates to units of instruction. Or I did such a good job presenting it last time, we don't have any additional questions. I would say that's probably not the right answer. I'm sure there are some lingering questions. Oh, you got all of Natalie in the chat indicated that we've helped her get her students out of error status. Beautiful. Oh, thanks, Greg. I think the presentation was clear. I think watching me try to stumble through live math examples when I didn't prepare the scenarios ahead of time was a little bit clumsy, but I appreciate the feedback. So I'm not seeing any additional questions or concerns about that. I will be adding to the DAISY 2.0 guide some of that information, so it will live there. Okay, 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 so that helped everybody. That is wonderful. All right, so rather than focusing on that, let me move to an issue that came up today. Now, I will certainly circle back to those questions if anybody has any questions. But I want to kind of touch base on one specific error that kind of popped up yesterday that's kind of new, and I wonder if this is impacting many of you. We've had a lot of turnover and change in the field in the last 2 years. And about a year ago, we released information to the field about how to ensure that you were accessing and seeing your high school equivalency scores. Those data matches were showing up in your system. 2 things I want to clarify. Even if you can't see them, we do. So you get full credit for them. Okay. So don't worry if you're not seeing them. From a state agency, we have access to everything. So we can. But what's happening often is either a program hasn't gone through the steps to see their HSE scores. And the program I was working with yesterday did correctly update everything. And they were like, "Ooh, great, we can see the scores from our students and we can see all of that." But they were missing a couple of students and didn't understand why those students weren't showing up. So I'm gonna kind of circle back and remind everybody where, if you don't have a student who's showing up and you have all the permissions set up, it would be important to look at that student's testing data. Is their name spelled correctly in both the GED manager or the HiSET test and the data system, the DAISY system? Because we're doing this on a data match. So are the names spelled correctly? Is the address correct in both locations? You know, there can be an address change from a student from the time they enter your program to the time they take your test. Is that address correct? Do you have a social security number, and is that number correct? Did they use the same social security number in both places? So before you kind of worry about maybe we're losing all the data, if you know students have tested and you know they've passed, look at the data that they have in both places. Is it the same? We are doing a data match. And if the data is not the same, the name is misspelled. For example, I'm Kathy Smith and it's S-M-I-T-H in DAISY and it's S-M-Y-T-H in the GED manager. We're not going to match those students. So it's really important that you look at those kind of connections to make sure if you think you're missing anybody. So I did see a question in there. I will get to Elizabeth. I saw that and I will answer that one. I just want to kind of stop and pause and see if there are any questions about answer questions about this. And the question that just popped up is, what if the student isn't entered into GED manager? If the student has taken the GED test, they would be in GED manager. If they're taking the GED test, if it's HiSET, however they've registered for the HiSET test. It's, you know, sometimes before a student goes to take the test, you can sit down with them and say, okay, we have to make sure that we get this data correct. How do you have it in that? How did you register for your test? How did you do that? What name did you use? Is the spelling? Did we have the same address? Letting the student reflect on that intake form and making sure all of that is still correct would be how I would approach that. Megan has her hands up. Megan?
I have a couple questions for you. Building off of Lori's question, sometimes we don't see the student. They're in GED manager, but they haven't designated our institution as something that is connected to them. So we don't get to see them in our view. So we are not able to check that information for the student. Could we contact someone at ICCB to verify like that the information matches?
If the student hasn't authorized you to have that information, we cannot provide it to you. That is the student's information. in your intake form, you can make sure that the student has checked that you are allowed to get that information, and then that will suffice because you can provide that to a GED manager that you're allowed to have it, and then you can get it. So I would
Okay,
add
so if
that
we have a
question.
consent, then we can share that with GED manager and they'll turn that student on for us.
Correct.
Okay, I did not know that. Okay.
Yes.
About a year ago, I made the suggestion that there be something added to Daisy for us to flag students that we're aware of have earned their credential, so that when you guys do the data match, you make sure that you guys are able to see it on your side. Is there still talk about possibly adding that to Daisy so that we have a way to note it for your purposes to make sure we're capturing everything?
I can have, we're planning our FY24 scope of work, so I can see where that would land in that one and get more information back to you. Often our scope of work is driven by what Octave's priorities are. This year, there are many things we'd like to add, but we wanted to get the core performance testing report back out to the field. We have another old report that we're re-releasing so that it fits WIOA. And we've done a couple, we had to add the co-enrollment, which is what I'm going to talk to you about Elizabeth's question. So there are some things that we have to do before we can get to what we want to do. But we can certainly kind of investigate that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Crystal, some students show up as failed because they're not getting credit for their constitution. Again, that's going to go back to that data matching. Did the student did they spell the name correctly in both locations when they registered for the GED, the constitution test? And I know that's a silly thing to say, did you spell the name correctly? Would you like to know how many times I hit an email and I catch it before I send it, where I say my name is Katie, K-A-T-Y, because I'm typing so fast, I miss the H. I know that's an extreme example because I catch it before I hit send, but there can be typos in that, and the student is not using their information. These are all data matches. So you have to make sure that the student has the correct information the same way it shows up in Daisy, the same way it shows up in the GED manager, or we're not going to get those data matches. So that's what I would say. Now, if your student does have a failed because they're not getting credit for their constitution and they can indicate they've passed it, let me know the student's name so we can do a deeper dive into that. It's hard for me to do some investigation with our systems when I don't know who I'm looking for. So if you have that as like, these are the students that tested, send that to us. I can do a deeper dive into it. More than likely, what we're going to find out is there is a difference between the name, and keep in mind, it's not only the name, it's a name and an address, name and an address that connects those, or name, address, and social security number. The more detailed information that matches, the better match ratio we're going to get. So again, before students take all of these tests, my suggestion is you put the intake form in front of them and say, okay, you're going to register for this. In order for us to get all these I's dotted and T's crossed, how did you register? Does it match this name? Okay. Is all the stars aligned? Is the address the same? Is the name the same? Is the spelling the same? And when at all possible, get the social security numbers. And is the social security number the same? Because sometimes we have different, I've had students that every time they come into my program, they gave me a different social security number. So what are you doing? So again, reviewing that intake or that demographic data before they take the constitution test, before they go take their high school equivalency, is going to really kind of help you make sure all those matches occur. Okay, so Lori's telling me she runs into the same thing a lot about not seeing the students who are passing. Okay. The constitution match is not only social security number, it is in part driven by that because that's the best match we can make. When that is not in place, as some of our students do not provide social security numbers, it goes by name and address and other identifiable information. So again, making sure that what they gave you on their intake is what they're using for the rest of their testing is going to help you get those matches. Okay, so I'm going to go back to, I saw something minute ago, talk about the co-enrollment with other titles. More clarity is needed in how we do it. So I want to give you context of why this is happening and what we're looking at. Every year we turn in our NRS data to Octave. That data is then reviewed by the Department of Ed, Octave staff. This year, around November, because we turned it in October 1st, around November, I had a call from Octave asking me to explain why we did not have any co-enrollment data. We've never collected it in the past. And we were, like many other states, were called out on this needs to happen and you need to collect this. They had requested we would backfill FY22's data. And we indicated that would be a huge burden on our programs to try and go back and look at all of the files from last year. So they have agreed to not request us to go back last year, but this year we need to do that. Going back to we have to build in DAISY what we have to do before we can do what we want to do. We had to build in that co-enrollment report. One of the things I've been looking for, which is quite amazing to me, is we do not have within our RIOA system a listing of all of the things that would qualify under those services. So for example, how does that intake staff member know what to put in? So there is going to be clarity. I have a meeting with my core partners. I'm developing a tool for your frontline staff and your teachers to use to indicate what's a Title I, Title III, and Title IV service and what qualifies for that. I will be releasing that. My hope is to have it done before IASA, but I'm not quite sure if that's going to happen, but it will be done this month. So I will get that out to you, and there will be like a little checklist that says these are the services that qualify. And then we will have to go in and enter whether that student is receiving any services from our core partners. I recognize the burden on this, but this is really kind of coming down from our federal partners. I would also indicate this is coming down as more and more scrutiny is coming into budgets, national budgets, not Illinois, nationally, how the money is being spent, what we're funding. So there's expectations that our partners are working collaboratively together and ensuring students, individuals get services, and that's being checked. So that's where it's coming from. I know that it doesn't help me to tell you that I'll get information out to you as soon as I can, but that's the impetus of the report, and that is why we're doing it. The question is, do we need to gather information on students who've already been enrolled or only the new ones? This has to be for anybody we've touched this fiscal year. So yes, we will have to look at everybody. The question about manually updating a student record to show they passed the Constitution, I do not believe that will be acceptable. I believe it has to come from that data match. So if that student isn't showing up, I need to know who that student is so that we can figure out if it's a disconnect between how they've entered their name and address in the Constitution portal and how they've entered that name and address and social security number and all those demographics on their intake, and we can pinpoint that. But I can't do a detailed dive unless I know who I'm looking for, and then we can kind of solve that problem. So here's a trick when you reach out to Kate or us for assistance with a student. We need details. I need to know who the student is you're looking for, and I need to understand the question. John Smith isn't showing up as passing the Constitution. He did pass the Constitution. We know this happened. So why is he not showing up? John Smith, this is who he is. Then we can look at it. But if I get information that my students are not showing up, I don't have anything to pinpoint and to look at, and then I can't figure it out, okay? I'm going to go back up here. We have found students often don't know if they're using WIOA title services. I think the checklist will help you, and we're going to capture it to the best that we can. So it will clarify for your individuals. It will clarify what fits. It may not be the only way to get there, but it will do enough clarification to help. Okay, the question is how to best fill in the minimum and maximum units of instruction on the course approval forms. This is going to be based on when you submit a course, how often the course is going to be meeting. You're going to determine how many days a week it meets, how many hours a week it meets, and how many weeks it meets. That's how you're going to get that. And that's really determined at the local level. So when you decide you're going to run a course, and I'm going to make this example up, and be careful, we're doing math on the fly. So let's say you're going to say we have a lot of these new immigrants coming into our city. They're being brought in from other states, and they're coming in at a very low level, non-literate level. I've got to have a new course for these low-level learners. That might be something that you're experiencing right now. So in order for me to run this class, I am going to run this class. I have a class that I want to meet 5 days a week because we're going to do really intensive services, and they're going to meet 2 hours a day. So that's 10 hours a week. And then they're going to meet 10 hours a week, and they're going to meet for 8 weeks. Right? So now you have the, I'm kind of going to go to my formula, the hours per day and the days per week times the number of weeks. So you're looking at 80 hours a week. And then you're going to say a student can take that class one time with 3 repeats. So the maximum units of instruction would be 80 times 4 is 320. So that's where you're, oh, divided by 15. I forgot the division. I knew that wasn't right. So you're going to take that number of hours per day, days per week times number of weeks. So we're going to have 80 hours based on, thank you, based on what I'm sharing. And you divide that by 15, and then I get 5.33 times my 4, because I can do it 4 times. That's going to be 21 hours. I mean, really, there's no optimal way to do this. This is basically what that class is and what works for you. If you want to have a class 6 hours a day, 5 days a week for 8 weeks, you can do that. That is optimal. Okay. I would build for course approvals the maximum you're going to do. And then when you do the classes, you're going to say, okay, this is how we're going to run the class.
Kathy, can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Hi, this is Mike from Word Relief. So just a question, if we find that a student might actually go beyond what we put in for the maximum units of instruction, is it the case where once they get beyond that, all their additional attendance in DAISY will not count? So we'll have to do a course modification to increase those maximum units of instruction. Is that correct?
That would be correct. And remember, this ties into repeatability. Okay. So the reason you're multiplying this by 4 is because the student is only allowed to take the class 1 time with 3 repeats. So the student can only take the class 4 times. So when they hit that max units of instruction, if it's correctly entered into our system, that means that you're butting into repeatability issues and they cannot keep taking that class over and over again. Theoretically, the student should be moving up in, like, if they're at NRS level 1 for an ESL learners, because they are very low functioning, we know it's going to take more than 8 weeks to get them to move up a level, right? We understand that this is going to take time. So you can do 2 things. You can reevaluate your units of instruction, because that's the intensity and frequency of your instruction. That's really what we're talking about. And if you're finding that that is not helping your students move forward, you can modify the course. Or you can do a NR, and I'm using this as an example. You can say this course was NRS ESL level 1, and they're not ready for a level 2, but they have taken the class too many times and they can't repeat it anymore, you can do an NRS level 1.5, right? And do another layer so that you can continue to move that student forward. So that might be another way to kind of do that and put them in a different, and you can stack the classes. So there's some options there about how to solve that.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay. I don't have any chats, anything here. May I ask you, how are you feeling about our data system now that the core performance report is back? All right. Good, good. Very good, very good. Okay, well, I know that there were concerns about our system, knowing we recognize that and we heard that loud and clear. I'm glad the rainbow's back. So I want to make sure that that's meeting your needs. I'm going to get clarity. I see Lori has a comment in here about the Constitution. I have been informed that it's a data match and that there's nothing that we need to do. What I'm seeing are two people in this group who have a different idea of what should be happening. So let me clarify that. And we'll be ready to answer that one in much more detail. What I believe is happening does not seem to be aligning with what you're telling me is happening in practice. So let me clarify some of that. I also want to let you guys know I'm really super excited about this. Three things, right? Three things. Let me math on the fly. Three things. Here you go. We're going to have a table at IASA. I'm not sure where the table is going to be located. I believe hopefully it's going to be located by the IASA table as you go into the grand ballroom. I'm not sure. I'll be happy wherever you put me, as long as I'm in the hotel and not outside. But we're going to have that manned by our ICCB staff the entire conference, so that if you have questions, you can find us. I will be taking some of those shifts, so to speak, so that we have a presence, so that you can come to us, DAISY questions, programmatic questions, ICAPS questions. We're going to have a presence there. Additionally, we requested, I've got so many wonderful success stories from students as a way to kind of reinforce the great work that you guys have been doing. We're going to try to have those present and scattered throughout, like these big foam board kind of posters showing you all these successes we had. I say we might because I didn't get that information to the people who are going to do that work soon enough, so they might have an unrealistic timeline. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I didn't delay their work too much and we can still have those ready for the conference. If not, we'll have them displayed at the WIOA Summit to again showcase your excellent work. So I just want you to know we recognize it, we see it, we know what you're doing, we want to kind of showcase what you're doing, and we'll have a pretty strong presence at our conference. Are there any additional questions, you guys? You got me here for a few more minutes before I have to hop off for my next meeting. What else are you needing with data as it's related to what we're doing with data?
That's some powerful wait time right there.
I know, I was like, somebody's got to have a question. I've never seen everyone being shy about Daisy, so.
It is. And I just want to encourage anyone who has, any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, or however, we are taking notes of all of these questions that you are asking to not only go into the FAQ, but also to help inform what is what's coming out, which is our data pathway.
Mhm.
So to better serve those who are doing intake, working with data, so any questions that you have, or any questions that maybe you feel like have been clarified, but you feel like this is a question that I've heard that keeps bubbling up. This needs to be something that is widely addressed in the training, is certainly something that you can send to us as well.
Thank you. The comment, there is no adult education administrative meeting with IASA. That is correct. However, our regional support will be doing a session. I think you'll find fun. Britt, our director for IELCE, will be doing an IELCE session. And of course, we'll have the ICCB session at IASA with fiscal staff in attendance to answer any budgetary questions and fiscal questions, wrapping up the end of the year. So we'll all have a presence there. The spring adult education administrative meeting is in April. I believe I have it as April 25th. It will be virtual and it will be a shorter meeting. So we'll keep it painless. It'll be taking kind of like the April Q&A. We'll just move that into kind of a more formal structure for everybody. Okay, Elena, that's a great question. The question in the chat is there a chance that Daisy will allow us to search for a student across fiscal years? Searching if a student has attended in each year separately is extremely time just complicated. So yes, I have that as another note as we start looking for what we're going to be building into it in FY24. The question about the ICCB session, it will not be recorded. It's a part of the conference. The question is, will the ICCB session with us at IASA be recorded? And that will not be recorded. This is a part of the IASA conference, not part of the Professional Development Network. So we will not have the ability to record and post. Okay. We can search. Okay. Okay, guys, this seems to be a lot of pausing here. I do have another 5 minutes. I have another meeting right after this. So I'm going to need to hop off and let you guys continue your conversation about the data systems if you have additional questions, or this might be kind of a quieter community and we all enjoy the wonderful, I would say sunny day, but I'm a little cloudy here, the rest of our day. So what do you guys need? Do you have time for more questions, or are you feeling like this addressed your needs? Erin, are these groups always as quiet?
Not usually, but it's usually a much smaller crowd. We've got
Okay.
43 in here. That can be an intimidating number.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, I do have to hop off for my next meeting, so I will, oh wait, hold on, I see another question. That's great. Before I hop off. Okay. I'm gonna ask Erin if you have no objection to make sure we capture the chat so that I can make sure I capture all of the requests. And Greg has a comment about the student itinerary and how the old one was much more useful. So I'll look at what that looked like and go from there. And then I can turn those requests into our RNA team who will be working on our scope of work next year for Daisy. So we'll get this planned out. Okay, guys, unless there's anything else landing for me, I need to step out. Like I said, I have another meeting that I'm literally back to back today. I know you guys can all relate to that because this is like mirroring your days every day of back-to-back things that have to happen. So I appreciate your time in this. Also know that as we mentioned in the NRS Institute, we would be doing data trainings. The data virtual learning community came out right after to support some of that work. We're addressing some of those key questions in the Q&As, and we're going to be much more intentional about some of the ongoing data trainings. And some of them are going to be focusing on intake, as I keep hearing from programs saying that seems to be kind of a key question area that we have. So we are following through with all the things we said we were going to do. It just looks a little different as we kind of implement them. So please know that your requests are heard and we're trying to address those. So with that, I'm going to step out, okay?
Thank you so much. Okay. So we have captured the chat. We have the recording. Again, all of that will be up on the Excellence website under the Data Virtual Learning Community. And if you ever get lost on there and need some help, feel free to email anyone in the PD and we can help to send you the right way. So with the remaining 20 minutes, I did want to kind of get some input from folks who are currently working in the field with data in either a data manager position. And we have some data directors in here, as well as just administrators who are responsible for everything all the time. Before I pull up my document, if you want to type in the chat or unmute, if there's something that you say, you know what, this is a need and it's something that needs to be addressed in the data pathway because it's affecting our program or it's affecting our data, feel free to add that in the chat or unmute. I know we're all quiet today, but
Erin, something that I'm in the midst of doing right now is pulling post-test lists and trying to identify like which students need a post-test, which ones have already made a level gain. And I know every program does it a little bit differently, but just I find it to be a very multi-step process that you have to really think strategically about who you're looking for and who you want to try and capture. So I think there needs to be some section of the training that talks about post-testing and the process for identifying the students and how to make that happen in an efficient way so you don't miss students.
okay. And as I pull up my, let me just pull this up really quickly and share my screen, and I can kind of share what we're thinking. And just share a portion of my screen so you don't have to see what I'm making for dinner. Okay. So this is just some of what we were thinking under the proficient pathway. So proficient really being what those who are doing intake are going to be responsible for. And of course, everybody who is responsible for more than that as well. So the important components of orientation and intake, the basics of MSGs and assessment, pointing back to that provider manual and funding basics. Of course, some basic Excel, how to use Excel once you have that there. Yep, I put this down here again, the intake process, and helping to clarify some of those pesky acronyms that we have, and some of the more basic program reports. So it's really an introduction to data. Now, as you're saying, Megan, the importance of post-testing, that was something that we had put down further toward the specialist training, like the processes of post-testing, setting the stage to get the best possible results. Now, is that something that you think would be more beneficial for everyone to have, including those who are doing intake, getting that, you said gathering that data so it can be done efficiently?
It would be more at like a coordinator manager level. Yeah.
Pulling those reports and
Yep.
using it efficiently. Okay, perfect. All right. Anyone else who would like to add, where, maybe not anything that you are personally struggling with, things that maybe you've noticed that others have challenges with, or something that you say, you know what, when I first started looking at data, this was a bit funky. And if I struggled with it, maybe someone else needs some clarity on it as well. I see Claudia has a hand up.
Hey, everyone. One of the things that I wish Daisy did was freeze things. And I've gotten my staff used to just saving things like all the time. For example, if I look up my enrollment today and notice that maybe 5 students have gone missing, I wish I would have saved it yesterday so I know what those 5 students are. So I don't know if there's a way that Daisy can do that for us, but that in itself has just helped a lot to continuously just download and save lists, so then it'd be easier to cross-reference when we have a student that's just kind of gone missing.
Okay, I am taking notes as I hear these things on a separate document. Okay. Does anybody have anything to add to what Claudia said, or anything? I'll ask if anybody has anything they want to clarify on what Claudia said before we move on.
I'll just piggyback on it and say that we had some really funky stuff going on with our NRS report, where every day I would have a different number of students that were reportable, but the number would go down, not up. So that was really bizarre, because I don't, and then it eventually recovered. So I'm not sure what was going on. So similar to what Claudia, I don't know who those students were that were one day on the report and then the next day not on the report, but it was not at a time of the semester where you would expect students to be falling off of the report.
I'll add to Megan. I agree. Like, we actually keep entirely separate records and rosters for that reason, because in order to track, were they there? Are they there now? Are they gone? And it's because we also have to put them into 3 databases, 4 if you count the roster itself, keeping that Excel spreadsheet. But the ability to pull that, or even to backlog, I know how you can like freeze and go see data on a computer, for example, from like last Monday. What did my computer's information look like last Monday, and see that? But again, if they're falling off for no reason and we're not sure what formula is affecting that, it might be impacting when you backtrack as well. But being able to backtrack and say all the data as of this date, and not just quarters, but as of, Monday, March 1st. I have something separate too, but it kind of applies in that I would love to be able to batch and add data to Daisy. I know Maggie's the proponent of this, and that's how they did integrate with Kankakey's application in the past. when she was there. And we would love to be able to replicate that with our new ERP system. And I've addressed it a few times. Essentially, it was said we need to tell this to Kate, to the information system, to make that change be able to happen again. And this was when we asked CC El-Haddad about it. So it would be ideal to be able to batch and put data in terms of student biographical data and then add them to classes. I've been told it's basically you either put everything in, including attendance, attestation of everything, or you do it all by hand. So that's something I would love to see as we get better.
And thank you for that, Mandy. This is Maggie. Hi, everybody. I'm formerly from KCC. I'm now at Joliet. And we were able to do that at Kankakee Community College. We were able to integrate our data system with Colleague, and it was incredibly helpful, both for personnel and job time purposes, etc. But think about that. That would also eliminate a lot of those misspellings that are across that, we translate from one to the other. So it was really helpful. And then when they switched it up, Daisy 2.0, we no longer have that capacity. So the change was made without talking to the end user. I know Greg is actually at Kankakee now, rock star that he is, so he can probably speak to it better than I can. I was just there when it was implemented.
I am typing down all of these comments that are not reflected in the chat to again make sure that they get to Kathy and those at ICCB. So I do have batch entering as a time saver.
Hey, Aaron, if you don't mind, Mary had asked a second question about ADA. I specifically asked that question of Kathy Olson Tracy a few months ago, and she indicated that they could not change that because that is Octave designations, and to be able to match when we upload and share data with Octave, it has to be in that format, so we couldn't add additional genders or naming. Yeah, Megan replied too.
Yeah, thanks. I'll make sure for sure that one is reflected in the FAQ as well.
And you guys, I will just add on basically to what Jeff just and Megan just said, but that question has been asked quite a bit about the sex, and there have been suggestions made, and the answer has been that basically that is determined by Octave, and at this point, that doesn't mean that it could never be changed, but it's not something that ICCB is able to adjust, and that doesn't mean that we can't continue to suggest. But I just want people to know that question has been asked several times and answered several times. So yeah, and thank you very much, Aaron, for capturing that so it can be in the FAQs for the future.
And Claudia, I do see your question there as well. And I'm also gonna kind of piggyback that onto the question as well, just not knowing whether it's yeah, exactly what kind of verbiage is coming from Octave. Any other questions, rants, haikus about data that you would like to share while we are all here together?
Possibly an acrostic poem in addition to the haiku, Aaron, I think.
I don't know what an acrostic poem is, but
one of my favorites, so
I'll look it up.
Well, this is Maggie from Joliet, and if you want me to, I can swear like a fisherman. Sorry, just kidding.
It's quite an offer, Maggie.
We'll take you up on that at IASA.
Yeah, there you go.
where we won't be recorded. Okay. So during this moment of silence that we have here, I'll again just remind everyone that if questions and things come up, even within your program, if you have those who are working at intake, at registration, and they're asking you lots of questions, and you think, okay, like these are good questions that somebody who is new to this position, or maybe not so new to the position, is asking, feel free to send those along to us. We would love to hear the questions that those who are working in intake have. That way, those can be reflected within the standards, or not the standards proficient, the data proficient pathway, so that maybe you don't need to answer that question every time that you get somebody new into that position. So that is something that can be shared more widely as well. And again, any questions that you have, even if they're more general and they do get answered by ICCB, and you think, you know what, if I have this question, maybe others do as well, feel free to send it along. I am saving every question so that we can consider those for the data pathway training. And Christina, thank you for the haiku.
I'll just do a little plug for IESA. I am doing a presentation on the data I wish I understood better when I was an instructor. So if anyone, it's more instructor facing, but if any of you guys have any of your teachers that will be there, encourage them to come and learn. It's just going to be a crash course on all things data and a little bit of an overview of how to get into DAISY and understand from an instructor perspective what's available for them in terms of student data, so they know how to navigate the system. So
That's awesome, Megan. Thank you for putting that plug in. We definitely need to capture that. And Erin, there was a question. Do you want to answer that about the timing for the data pathway training?
Sure. So the data proficient should be out and ready to pilot in the fall, Sarah? Am I correct in that, or is that the spring? I believe it's
Yeah, well, right now where we are is Erin kind of showed you her super secret notes. They really aren't super secret. They're at ICCB, and Kathy's taking a look at that now, and then she's going to be reaching out to the rest of our professional development network and to some of you folks around the state and to regional support to give information, and then we'll start building that really probably sooner rather than later in this fiscal year yet, but when it actually rolls out will be early in the next fiscal year, parts of it. One thing I want to make sure that you may have noticed when Erin put her screen up, that there were a lot of clickable links. That means that anything that you saw like that training already exists. So if you're looking for pieces of this, there's a lot of it that already is in place. It's just Erin's doing a great job of pulling it together and packaging it. It's going to be on iLearn. But for instance, the DAISY 2.0 guide, a lot of the trainings that Cece did not that long ago actually aren't there. And then like the pieces from the NRS Institute, there's things that are on the Excellence site. So what I'm telling you is like a lot of it exists. So if you're looking for something, reach out and Erin can help you, direct you to where, if it already exists, where that is. Of course, that's not the most user-friendly. That's why this is happening now, that we're saying, okay, what all does the field need? What do we already have? What else do we need to create? And then how can we package it in the most user-friendly way possible? So that is what is happening right now. But again, just because it isn't complete doesn't mean that you couldn't have access to many of these pieces if you need them. So just kind of putting that plug in.
And Lori, I see your question. Will you be emailed a copy of this, and I will say, I'm going to lead you back to that Excellence website, and I'm going to put the link here in the chat for you, and then I will also share my screen for that. The recording will go up. I always put it in two places on the Excellence website. So the first place that I shared directly is our data virtual learning community page, which again, we've got that new data training suggestion box. If at any point you have thoughts you want to add, our FAQ is linked up here. It's a living Google Doc. So once you open it, you can save that Google Doc to your drive so that you can access it. We have our February one. I will get the March one up as soon as the closed captions are all tidied up. And then to see future ones, you can go to the calendar and search through, either by looking at the date or going to the list view to see all of the wonderful things that we have coming up. So that Excellence site is where all of our recordings from these more public trainings are available.
Did want to just mention, Megan was asking about if they would be asynchronous or cohorts, and I did reply, but I just want to say, first of all, if you have suggestions, as Aaron was just talking about, as not just only in content, but also in format and the way that you interact with information, there is still time to make suggestions. And I think some of this we want to look at as, in addition to training, it's a toolkit. So that means that there'll be a lot of pieces that you can go back and revisit. Even if you've gone through a training, you can go back and look for these kinds of things that will help you. And we're also looking at multiple ways to present information whenever possible. Like, here's a recording, and along with the recording, here's a bunch of key screenshots that will help you, so that whenever you're looking for, you can find it in a format that really works for you. And I think, to your point, Megan, sometimes a good format is the ability to sit down and discuss, so that you can learn at a deeper level, that you can learn from each other. So yes, there'll be some of that. And the other thing is, even if when we roll this out in that first year, I mean, there's going to be some piloting, but then in the first year, if there's something like, hey, I really think this is missing, that's the beauty of having a lot of virtual engagement. It's very easy to say, okay, well, let's just put that in, or let's just add that in, or let's make that an option for learners.
Great.
Yeah.
And Megan, to your nice segue right here with your final note, how you said it's nice for individuals in similar roles at different programs to have the opportunity to connect with each other. I do want to put a plug in for our next data VLC, which will be in April, where I've asked folks from different programs across Illinois to give a little snapshot of what they do with data from each part of the process, from intake to the analysis. So if you want to get a view of how different programs are gathering data, using data, I highly encourage you to put that April VLC on your calendar and join us then. And it will be on Thursday, April 6th. And you can find that information on the Excellence website. So thank you everyone for attending, and hopefully I will see you all in April. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks to Aaron for leading us.